بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This week inshallah we'll start with Tayammum. Tayammum doesn't really have a good translation in English. The technical meaning of Tayammum is to do ablution with the earth. The linguistic meaning of Tayammum is to actually intend something. And because of this linguistic meaning, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses وَلَا تَيَمَّمُوا الْخَبِيثَ مِنْهُ تُنْفِقُونَ, and do not intend to give the worst part of your wealth, the part of your wealth that is rotting, that is about to go to waste, and you give that in sadaqah. So the tayammum comes linguistically from the word to intend something. And it's important to understand that when a person does hadath of any kind, he goes into a state. It is, if you want to try and understand it, like an aura that is around him. So if a person does a minor hadath, then that aura is over the area that has ablution done to it normally. And water itself is naturally cleansing. Therefore it is purifying. The earth itself is not naturally cleansing. So when you do tayammum, you do the tayammum in lieu of what is the natural ablution. So the tayammum has its specific rulings with regards to the intention, as opposed to the ablution, the wudu. The Hanafi madhab does not have the intention as a fard or a wajib, as you'll remember. But in tayammum, it is a condition. Why? Because tayammum itself means to intend. So when you do the action of tayammum, you go out of the state of minor impurity or major impurity. So you go out of janaba, or you go out of, being out of wudu, if you want to think about it, or being in the state of hadath. The tayammum takes you out of that state. Even if you consider that no water actually got to the skin to cleanse it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this rukhsa. This rukhsa is proven from the Quran, it is proven from the ahadith, and it is proven from the ijma' of the ummah. Understand that when something is proven in the Quran, you don't need to go to the hadith to seek further evidence. And when evidence is found from the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, you don't need to go to the ijma', right? Because the first level evidence already means it's established. But we look at the ahadith and we look at the aqwal of the fuqaha to see how it is done. Not to debate whether it is done or not, but to debate when it is done, where it is done, how it is done. So as will be the kind of, regular thing that we do in the fiqh class, we will be discussing all day for fuqaha with regards to the ways that tayammum is done. So from now on, I won't translate it because I've shown you how hard it is to translate. So we'll from now on just use the Arabic word tayammum. Okay? In some books I have found sand ablution, dry ablution, and I don't think they really cover what is tayammum anyway. So the first question that you will ask will, when is tayammum possible? So we'll cover that, and then we'll go to the conditions and the pillars, the sunan, what can be used, that kind of thing. There are two primary kinds of situations where tayammum is done. One is where water is not available. Okay? And that means that within a reasonable distance, you can't get water. And we'll come to details, inshallah, in a minute. And the other kind is water is available, but it is not able to be used. Okay? Either because you have an illness that if you put water on yourself, that illness will get worse. Or you are concerned that the illness will be prolonged. Okay? And we'll come to details in a second. The water is available, but you are unable to reach the water. So for example, you are in jail and the water is a whole gallon of water right outside your cell, but you can't go outside of your cell to get to it. Okay? Or for example, you are outside and traveling, and the water you can see is there, but it's beneath a cliff, all right? And it would take quite a lot of time to get to it, quite a lot of hardship and risk of life. The water is there, but the amount of water is insufficient and it is required for vital purposes. Now the fuqaha describe those vital purposes and we'll come to those details. There is no instrument to get the water. So there's a well, there's lots of water there, but no one has a bucket to get the water out. No one has any ability, no pipe, no hose, nothing to get the water out. And finally, it is too cold, which really fits in the same category of fearing for illness. And we'll come to now some details. So the fuqaha have some minor differences on how they define that water is not available. So, for example, Imam Abu Hanifa mentions a 1 mile, and the modern fuqaha have tried to determine what that mile was from their time, because a mile now is different to what there was. So the internationally agreed amongst the fuqaha is 1,852 meters is 1 mile of that time when Imam Abu Hanifa made that decision. Others have said 2 miles. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, for example, has said that whatever would be considered reasonable distance to go and search for water. Imam Shafi'i, for example, says that if you're able to see out, the distance that a person can normally make out something, okay? I can see as far as something and I can make out that's a person, that's 2 people, that distance. That will be roughly something in the region of 2 miles. So something in the region of 3 to 4 kilometers. Do you have to go and search for water or not? The detail is that if you believe that there is water there and that you can get it within that distance, then you have to go and get it. So someone says to you, half a kilometer from here, if you go this way and you go this way, there's water there, then you should go out and look for it. If you have reasonable judgment that there is no water in that distance, then you don't have to go and look for it. In addition, if you are with a group of people and they have water, then you should go ask the water from them. Unless they are a rowdy bunch, very rude, and very precious with their water, you don't have to go and seek it from them. The fuqaha go to the extent to say that if someone is selling the water at a normal price, then you have to go and buy the water at a normal price. If the water, like you go for Hajj, I went for Hajj almost 10 years ago now, that I was going in the plains of Arafat. They sell a water bottle for 1 riyal, but in Arafat it suddenly became 10 riyals. There's little kids selling it. They're trying to make a profit on that day. So in that kind of situation, you don't have to buy the water because they are selling it well above market rate. So you get the sense that in some place like Sydney, where there's plentiful water, you're not going to really get into that situation. And they talk about urban scenarios in general, you don't meet this category of water not being available. Generally in urban areas. Now, there are some areas of the world, desert areas, where the whole year round in that town, there is insufficient water to do wudu. That happens in certain places where they don't get enough rainfall, they don't have water underneath. The amount of water is only sufficient for their drinking and their cooking, and that's it. So they will be making tayammum even in those urban areas, and there are specific rulings for those kinds of people. Okay, the water is available, but it's not able to be used. So, for example, someone has a big cut, okay? And he's afraid that if he puts water on that cut, that it will become infected. Someone has an example, he's had surgery, and he's been told, don't get any water on that for the next week until it heals. Then you cannot put water over that area. And there's other situations. There's a very rare condition called the butterfly syndrome. Kids are born with it, and they are allergic to water. So for their whole life, they can never touch water. There's kinds of medical illnesses like that. Similarly, if a person has a condition where if he would wash himself, that it would prolong the illness, then he similarly can do tayammum. We discussed being unable to reach water. I don't think that needs any further explanation. The water is required for vital purposes. So there's only sufficient water that for the duration that you are traveling or wherever you are, that water is only enough for drinking. That if you were to use that water, then you wouldn't have enough water for drinking, then you can make tayammum. Okay. Similarly, usually water is used for cooking of every kind. Baking, you need water for that. Just to make bread, you need water for that. You want to cook any kinds of vegetables or meats or anything, generally you will need water. Obviously, if you're doing a barbecue, it's different. But you generally need, so they describe that if a person has flour and water as his food for the journey, and that water needs to be used for drinking and cooking, then he can also make tayammum. Before I even did the Fiqh of Taharah, I had a question in my mind, which was, if a person has najasa and he doesn't have enough water, what will he do, right? And it's an interesting thing, and I'm doing some further research on it. But the fuqaha have mentioned that removing the najasa, if the person only has that much water to remove the najasa, he will prioritize removing the najasa and he will do tayammum. Okay? Because once a person did tayammum, he's in the state of wudu, but his clothes and his place of worship also have to be tahir as well, right? So he can remove the najasa with the water as a priority, and he can do tayammum to remove his own hadath. That will be the steps. And the place of worship, what Allah says, Inna ardullahi wasi'ah. If this place is not tahir, you can go to the next one or the next place. You find a place. So those things can be resolved, but removing the najasa will need water of some kind. We discussed the no instrument to get water, and it is too cold. So the person will have to feel it is really under causing illness. So someone is in Antarctica or a very cold place like that, that if he were to expose himself and put water on him, you literally, as you put the water, it freezes on you. So the person would get exposed to unnecessary cold and may die as a result of that. And there are stories from the Sahaba when they went to Constantinople and they fought. They died because of the cold as they were doing wudu. So the fuqaha have looked at these things and discussed them. Tayammum will be fard for a fard prayer. Similarly, it will be sunnah for a sunnah prayer. The tayammum will be voluntary for a voluntary prayer. So if a person does not have wudu, he cannot find water, and he wants to read the Quran, the tayammum is valid for that. Okay? It does not have to be only for the prayer that you do tayammum for. And we'll discuss how many prayers and what you can do apart from that. Those are the types of tayammum. We'll go to the conditions. Any questions so far? Everything's understood?
For example, if I have a wound,
Yes.
one part of the area where you wash the pollution.
Yes.
In some places.
Yes.
For example, this area, but all other.
Everything else is good.
Okay.
Yes.
What can I do?
Okay. Imam al-Shafi'i says that he will do wudu, and when he comes to the area that he cannot do it, then he will do tayammum.
In that area.
Yes, that area. Well, he does so my understanding is the Shaykh can complete it. Yeah, we will do Jabira next week, inshallah. Okay. So when I will do Jabira, we will do it next week, inshallah. Because I have to do some more research on that. Yes.
What if he's got like issues with hands, like some sort of allergies or just sickness for a certain period of time that he cannot touch water with his hands, for example.
Yet obviously, so that person is in the same category as that he has an illness, right? Because you need the hands to do everything, right? You can dunk your head in the water, I guess. You can put your feet in the water. But really, you need your hands for everything. So if you can't use your hands, then you can't do proper ablution, so you will do tayammum as well. The fuqaha discussed the situation where a person is unable to do wudu and he's also unable to do tayammum, and I'll go through the details next week because all the four schools have different opinions about that. Sorry? Faqud al-Tahurain, yes, there's a chapter on that. So next week, if we finish tayammum today, that's good. If we don't finish it, we will complete it next week. And then we will do miscellaneous topics like this, like the jabira, like bandages, like a plaster. We will do salas al-bawl, inshallah. And we will do the Faqud al-Tahurain, the person who cannot do wudu and cannot do tayammum either. If someone's in a jail, there's no water, and everything he has is not able to be used for tayammum, then we will discuss what that person has to do.
One question, when you're traveling,
Yes.
and you know you can get water in restroom, things like that
Yes.
in the airport,
Yes.
but you don't have the time or access to get in quickly before you board, say if you're in transit.
The time is something I will cover. The timing they have, can I come to it inshallah as I do it inshallah? Any other questions to ask questions about what we've done? Any questions about what we've done? All understood inshallah? Yes?
Someone in the state of Janaba
Mm-hmm.
and he don't find the water.
Yep.
So is it necessary he can do the tayammum and pray, or he have to remove the najasa or whatever?
Yeah, so the najasa he can remove, and remember that you don't necessarily need water to remove it from the private part. Okay? But once it's on the clothes, then you will need it, right? Or if the mani has dried, then you can scratch it off. So you have those options.
Can
Right.
he change the cloth?
Of course, he must change the clothes if he has that's easy, right?
What
So
about
if you have different clothing, very easy. You just change your clothing.
the
Right.
body parts?
The body parts you can wipe it off.
That's
So remember that with cleaning the najasa off the body, the thing to do is to remove it either with stones or leaves or things of that kind, right? So in our times, as I said to you, the simple thing is to use toilet paper. Then if you have water, then you will use the water as well, right? It is allowed to use the water only. So you don't have enough water, okay, and you're going to do tayammum, then you will use toilet paper to clean your body as well as you can, and you change your clothes. If you have that option, then you're solved, no more problems. The situation is you are traveling, you don't have any clothes, and there is not enough water, then now there's a problem of najasa on your body, as well as you having to do tayammum. But the simple thing is that the tayammum takes you out of the state of janaba, and now you can do everything. Even if water becomes available, you do not have to go and do a ghusl, except for Imam Malik. But we'll come more to that inshallah. Any questions about what we've done so far? All right. Do you guys want to stop here and continue next week, or shall we do 5 more minutes? Do a bit more? Yes? Yeah, I'm ready. My wife's overseas. I've got no issues. I'm a free man. So the time period for that obligatory prayer must have begun, except for Imam Abu Hanifa. So Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal say that if you are intending to pray dhuhr, the time of dhuhr must have entered before you make tayammum. Okay? Although Imam Abu Hanifa says it is valid, for him he says the person should delay the tayammum until the time is almost finishing. So there's one thing called validity and one thing called recommendation. Do you understand the difference? So he says that if someone looked for water, he didn't find the water, he did tayammum, now dhuhr enters and he wants to pray dhuhr, he can pray it. All the others say that I made tayammum for dhuhr after dhuhr entered. As soon as asr enters, I now have to make a new tayammum for asr prayer. I can only pray one faridah with it. Imam Abu Hanifa says that a person can pray multiple faridahs with it. Once he's done tayammum, that is now he is in the state of ablution, unless water becomes available, etc., etc. And we'll come to what invalidates the tayammum. I'm trying to be systematic, but I'm jumping from here to here. Sorry.
And as many sunnahs as you want.
Yes, but the intention is important, so we will come to that inshallah. The person must consciously intend. According to Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, the intention is a condition. Okay? And Imam Shafi'i and Imam Malik say it is a rukun. So what is the difference between a pillar and a condition? Do you guys understand the difference? We've done conditions and we've done pillars many times. Who can tell me what the difference is?
Pillar will break the worship, the irada.
The lack of the pillar, yes? Yes. Makes the ibadah incomplete, so invalid.
Condition.
Is the same. If you don't have the condition, the thing is invalid. So,
جزء من الماهية لا تتحقق والماهية اللي بها ركن.
yes. So the rukn has to be done as part of the action. Okay. So I can have the intention to do tayammum, and 15 minutes later I do tayammum. Okay. That's fine for Hanafis, but not for Shafi'is. Do you understand the difference? So, sorry?
الشرط ما وجب تقديمه على الشيء.
That's correct, yeah. So the shart has to be something that is before it. So the condition has something that has to be before the action, whereas the rukn has to be part of the action. You understand that? But really, in reality, everyone says you must have an intention. Then they go into even more detail about what kind of intention is. And I'm going to summarize here because they have a lot of differences and you will get confused. Very simply, make the intention for the highest possible thing. And what's the highest possible thing? A faridah, right? Something that is fard. So if someone makes an intention for a fard prayer or a fard tawaf, then after that he can do all kinds of wajibat and sunan after that. If he makes an intention for a sunnah, then he cannot do a fard. If he makes an intention for a voluntary, he cannot do higher than that. Okay? Only Imam Abu Hanifa says that if someone makes the tayammum with the intention to remove the hadith, it is valid. The others say no. So simply, because I know the problem is tayammum, you do it once in a year, once in 2 years. Most of the time you don't do it. So what's to remember? Make the intention for what? For the fard prayer. And he starts with the fard prayer, and after that he wants to make as many sunnah, he wants to pray 20 nawafil, he can do that. He wants to read Quran, he wants to do tawaf, he can do anything beyond that. Someone who was in junub, so the woman finishes menstruation, she wants to have the relations with the husband, what does she have to do? Ghusl. Water is not available, she does tayammum, and after that, she's available. So the intention is important. The other condition, like all the things around fiqh, is that the person must be a Muslim. They all say the person must have searched for water, and we have gone through the details around that. Just like wudu, there must be no barrier on the area that is to have tayammum. Okay? And the area that is in tayammum is the face, right? And the arms up to the elbows. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and in one book I read that Imam Malik as well, say it is up to the wrist as a rukun. But even both of them say that it is to the elbow as a sunnah. Okay? So if you go search online and you try and find YouTube videos of how to do tayammum, you will find the Salafis in general will say you do the face and you do the arm and that's it. Okay? But reality is that both the Shafi'is and the Hanafis say that it needs to go up to the elbows. So if the person has wax or dough or something else that is on his arm that prevents the purification, just like it would prevent the water getting on the skin, that needs to be removed. Like nail polish, something like this. Okay. So same ruling as it is used for the wudu. The other difference is that usually with Imam Shafi'i, he says the ring is allowed. In Tayammum, you have to take that out. Okay? So the purification that's happening with the dust needs to get to the part that has to be done. The menstruation and the nifas has to have stopped before the person can do tayammum. The other condition for the Hanafis is that he needs to wipe the entire area. That's the condition, and it is a rukun for the others. I am going to stop here, 7:45. We will do the pillars and the sunan next week, inshallah. You will need to bring notebooks if you want to, because I'm going to go into a bit more detail next week, inshallah. Okay, so it's hard to remember. Bring some notebooks, inshallah. Yes.
So that's about the pillars. There's no point until we get there.
Okay, do you want me to go through the pillars? Okay, let's go through the pillars. That's fine. We'll go through the pillars and we'll stop at the pillars, and then we'll do sunan next week. Is that okay? All right. The first is intention. We did that. The second is the use of a purifying dust. And I'll come to what each of the madhabs say. Wiping the entire face. In the boundaries of the face we did before. The hairline, the chin, okay? In tayammum you have to do the whole face. One time. The arms up to the elbows, Malikis and Hanbalis to the wrists. Just like wudu, the Malikis and the Hanbalis say mu'alah, the continuity is required. Just like in wudu, the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis say the order is required. So what's first, the face or the arms? Face. Good. And just like in wudu, the Hanbalis say that the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is wajib. Okay? So you know, the fiqh is based on principles. So the fuqaha looked at the wudu and they translated those same principles to tayammum. So the fara'id are very much similar. The main difference is in wudu, Allah made the face, the arms, the head and the feet faridah, whereas the faridah of tayammum is based on what the Prophet ﷺ did rather than from the Quran. So from the Quran we got those 4 minimum things, but the Prophet ﷺ only did the face and the arms, so that's why that's the faridah. The Shafi'is and the Hanbalis are the strictest about which materials can be used for tayammum. They say that it must be sand that has dust in it, okay, or earth that has dust in it. All right. So they don't allow, for example, stones or pebbles or metals, gold, silver, that kind of thing. You cannot do tayammum on that. So I cannot just touch this and do tayammum with this. The Hanafis say that you can use earth, sand, soil, stones, pebbles, regardless of whether there is dust on that or not. And also if something has a visible layer of dust on it, then you can use that. So if you go to your home and you find your bookshelf, you go to the top floor, it's full of dust because you don't clean it, you can do tayammum with that. Okay? The Malikis also allow ice. The Hanafis don't allow ice. And the Malikis also allow metals apart from precious metals like gold and silver. So that the Malikis can do tayammum with that. So if someone is in jail and has got an iron door, he can do tayammum with that if he is Maliki, not if he is Shafi'i. Okay? So now you're in an airplane. What materials does an airplane have to do tayammum in it? It has plastic and fabric. Is there any metal? There's no metal. Right? If you're Maliki, you can get the seatbelt out and there's a small bit of metal there. So what we see our ulama doing is when they travel, they actually carry a stone with them and they do the tayammum with that. The Shafi'is, you see, will carry some sand of some kind like that, and they do the tayammum with that. So it requires planning. You know you're going to go on a journey where there is no water. You are traveling in Arabia or North Africa or something like that. You know there's no water. You pre-plan your journey and you take something with you that you can do tayammum with. Usually, in those kinds of hot areas, there is plenty of earth that you can do. One final thing I have to say. Let's say a dog urinated or a human urinated in an area. Let's take an easier example. It's going to get differences of a human urinated in a place, right? It has now dried. You can pray in that area, but you cannot do tayammum in that. Okay? Because that earth itself also has to be, purifying itself. It cannot just be tahir, it has to be tahur as well. It has to be purifying. Mutahhir. I was trying to think of the word. So that has a difference. So you have to be more picky with what you are using to do the tayammum. We'll stop here and we'll do the sunan, and the actual actions. We'll go through some tutorials of actually how to do the tayammum. Any questions about this so far?
Yes, I have, especially in aeroplane, can you just wet the hands and wipe it with?
You can wet the hands and
wipe?
No.
No wiping?
No. You mean to do a wudu with as minimum water as you can? No, you cannot do that.
Can't do that?
No.
And it's not, the water can't be used at all for tayammum as well?
The water cannot be used for
small quantity that you can use.
Right. So I'll come a bit to that because Imam Shafi has his own opinion about that. But the Hanafis state that if there's insufficient water to do a valid wudu, and for the Hanafis it is to do it once and it has to be washed. The definition of washing is what? That at least one drop comes out. Right? So if I was to take water, leave the water and just wipe it, there will be no drops coming out. It won't be valid, right? So the areas that need to be washed at least once with the whole area covered. If you have that amount of water, which is going to be about half a liter. If you don't have half a liter, you don't have enough water to do wudu, then you will do tayammum. But we'll discuss that more next week.
If the prayer time is finishing, and the person, if he goes in for the search of water, there is a chance that the time will finish, what he has to do.
All the four fuqaha have different rulings on this, okay? So Imam Abu Hanifa says that he will allow the time to be delayed. I'm saying that because I think you're Hanafi. Am I right? Yes. Okay. So he says that because the prayer can be prayed delayed, then he will allow it to be prayed delayed. He has further rulings that if it is, for example, the Eid prayer which cannot be prayed later for us, and now you will ask me a lot of questions about the fiqh of prayer, and so after Taharah we will go into the fiqh of prayer. So Eid prayer cannot be prayed later in the Hanafi madhab. Therefore, if a person has lost wudu and the prayer is started, if he goes to do wudu and he comes back, he will lose the prayer. He can do tayammum. Similarly, the funeral prayer. Really, and there's no other examples. So he will be delayed for the time, but he still has to go and to look. The others say that if going out will mean that he will miss the prayer, then he will do tayammum. Okay. The whole question I have though is, why did you leave it so late? Okay. Why are you leaving your prayers so late to the point that there's, insufficient time to do wudu? As I've said to you, if you practice to do a sunnah wudu, it should take you a minute, 15 seconds, no more than that. Obviously, the process of getting the water is a different issue.
Can marble be used?
Marble.
Yes.
If the marble had dust on it, so you are actually using the dust rather than the marble. Well, it's a type of stone, so yes, you are right. You can use it. In the Hanafi madhab, yes, it is a stone, so you can use it. It actually comes into the category of things you can use.
What they are referring, is hadith or whatever.
The differences of the fuqaha relate to how their usul is set up. Okay? So, and is also how they looked at the Quran, how they defined the words in the Quran, how they looked at the hadith. I think it was Sufyan al-Uyayna said that if every person were to follow the hadith, he would go into, he would do fasad of his deen. And what he meant was that it is for the fuqaha to read the hadith and extract the ruling from it. And so, Imam Abu Hanifa looked at, and Imam Malik looked at Sa'idan Tayyiban and said that means everything that is on the top of the earth that can be used as purifying. So he looked at ice and said, well, ice is actually not on top of the earth, it is just frozen water. So it's water, it's not earth. Imam Malik said that in the area that you live in, like Antarctica, that is ice, that's on top of the earth all the time. So they looked at it from different angles. Can you see that? So each one in his own angle is correct. Imam Shafi'i looked at Sa'idan Tayyiban and said that this is purifying earth. It's not everything that is top of the earth. So they looked at it from different definitions.
You can use the same sand multiple times to do the tayammum.
Okay, so you will have to, right? But let me try and explain this way. We'll go through the actions of it. You striked, right? And you did your face, and you struck, and you did your hand. So you're pretty much using the same area. But let's say I have done tayammum, so I have the purifying dust. You can't come on me because I have used that dust, right? And strike me and do your own tayammum. You can't do that because that dust has now been used.
I can't do on you.
No.
The second person can't do
On you. But they're going to come and, for example.
No, if I've seen people when they're sick,
Yes,
they used to have like in a bucket of
that's fine.
sand.
You will, you're praying, you're sick and you're praying 5 times a day and you're doing 5 tayammums in the same bucket, that's fine. That's not an issue.
Only they need to make sure it's no najas on the sand.
That is, yes, mutahhir. Yes.
And you avoid to touch your during the tayammum.
We'll do that next week. Leave that next week. We'll do how it's done, how the action is. If you take away, if you go like this and you take it away, you don't have anything purifying on you. That invalidates the tayammum. Come next week, inshallah, we'll go through the details of that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. We'll start there.